We are talking law on Radio 97, and if you have a legal question and you'd like Despina to answer it on the radio, you can do that by sending us some info. Just go to radio97.com.au. On the front page there's a couple of ways of contacting us. So do that any time of the day or night, and Despina happy to answer the question for you. Radio97.com.au, and just follow the links there.
Alrighty, segment 2, a big one. We're adding to the media coverage with this one without even realizing. No, Bruce Lerhmann and the Brittany Higgins trial. We've all heard about it. But today, this morning, we want to talk about the issues that we've noticed, and obviously Despina has noticed, that have arisen when it comes to trial by jury. So, Despina, talk us through. What are the issues?
Yes.
How can it possibly be avoided in the future, I guess, is the big question.
Where do we start?
Well, I don't know. I want it in your court. I don't know.
Well, I'm very fortunate we have this segment. I suppose I can provide my views, which I like to think are not biased views, and I like to always try and think they're objective views. But I suppose we can start off by, and we've talked on the show before, I think we canvassed this last time with the Christian Porter case. Yeah. If you remember, we talked about that earlier in the year, or last year it was. I can't remember when that was, so many months ago. But it's a similar issue, isn't it? And I think in this particular case, I think more about the nature of the case, if I can say it, that it was, I suppose, even more heightened and focused in the media, and with the lead up to it, it was quite rife in that way. But what we're really talking about here is, I suppose, can we really maintain this jury bubble? You know, yeah. and that's what juries are. They've got to be in this bubble. They've always got to be, and that's the cornerstone of democracy, is having trials by jury, isn't it? So, and we've always had it. We've had it for centuries. And really, it was, the premise is that you are going to have a decision by a jury of your peers, and it's a lawful judgment of one's peers, if you could call it that, where the jury ultimately comes to a decision, and it's a lawful judgment or a decision by one's peers in society. And we've always had this. And the idea is that the jury is in a bubble where they're segregated really from any outside sources. And it's really becoming far more difficult than ever before for juries to be in this bubble, as I call it, where they're not able to access information, stories, anything that's been published, written on the internet or elsewhere about what they're actually asked to deliberate on.
And of course, that just simply isn't realistic these days. Anyone who has a phone has information and has the ability to gain access to information from around the world at their fingertips.
Oh, absolutely. And how do we manage that and monitor that and control that? And that's the real issue here. I mean, people now can have their internet on their phones. Sometimes I can't tell if someone's phone is actually a phone that has access to their emails and their internet. Sometimes I can. I mean, and how do you control that? I think you were saying off air, all the jurors would be expected to put their mobile phones in a basket.
Well, this is what happens.
But for a month, that's the thing. It could be the night before you'll read something, but even you could be swayed.
That's true. And even these days in school, the kids in so many classrooms, they have to put their phones in either in their lockers or in some other way, keeping the phones away from the kids, because they're doing the same thing. They're having access to information outside the classroom, outside the school.
Always.
And it's very difficult to control.
Exactly right. So the question is, should we be moving away from trials by jury, when trials by jury, as I said before, has really been the cornerstone of democracy and the rule of law in this country? And it dates back, of course, we have mirrored what's happened in the UK for centuries. And one author I was reading the other day talked about this being the lamp which shows that freedom lives, which I think is very true, and it has been for all these centuries. But now we're moving towards a different era, aren't we? And we're embarking on 2023, for goodness sake. And we've had this trials by jury in place for easily 800-900 years, and now we've moved forward. Fast forward to 2023, no one could have envisaged back then when we started trials by jury, where we would be in society in 2023, which we're almost there. So the question is, should we have judge-alone trials? Should they become mandatory? And I'd love to hear what the listeners have to say. To be honest, I'd love for them to reach out to you or me in this little pocket that we have here when we have access to people listening out there. But should it be mandatory? And if it should be mandatory, can we try and put parameters about when it should be mandatory? For example, once publicity around a case has reached a certain threshold, but what threshold is that?
Yeah, well, it's almost the high profile situation. Like establishing who is high profile, who isn't. If it's Joe Block down the road and you don't know his name, I highly doubt the coverage is going to be as intense and ongoing as Brittany Higgins' case. So there's definitely an easy line there that you could draw.
I totally agree. So the other lines could be, yes, high profile, but then what does that mean within being politics? Or does it mean within the media? Or does it mean something else? A sports person. And what if what you can't really have a parameter, for example, okay, well, only if they're a politician should it be a standalone judge-alone trial, and that wouldn't be fair. But I think it's probably going to be based on a number of factors. Yes, high profile. Yes, whether it's political or not, but also about the nature of the case. I think that's really, really important because, you know, does it involve sexual assault, sexual abuse, rape allegations? Is it a domestic violence situation? Is it a murder trial? You know, and all these types of natures you know, types of crimes, if I could put it that, but well, if they are crimes at all, alleged crimes, I should say, really, does it raise the bar? Does it really mean that we shouldn't allow these jury trials anymore because of the social media aspect, because of the influence, because that you can actually access any information at any given time without proper controls, where you are supposed to be seen to be objective, which is very difficult these days? Should we put those parameters in place and those factors to say, well, in that particular type of case, if it meets all of that, it should be a judge-alone trial? I think we really should be moving towards that. And if anybody would love to provide feedback or their comments on that, by all means. But those were my thoughts about this, And really, at the end of the day, can this be a fair trial next year in February?
So do you think it could be a fair outcome?
I don't see how it can be a completely fair and objective outcome now, because we've had a mistrial, sure, it's been announced. But since that announcement's come forward in the media, there's been other people speaking to the media in different forums about what's happened and giving their opinion. And the way that they've provided that opinion and made those statements, I think in some respects, and I can't say who they all are on air, but some of those statements I think were biased. And I think that listening to those statements, if you were supporting that particular person and what they usually say, might seem to be biased in now what they're coming out and saying about the mistrial and why they consider it to have been fair or unfair, and you know, supporting one of the parties involved in the trial over the other party, if that's the best way I can say it objectively. So I think I really have my doubts about that. And, you know, putting parameters on whether something should be a judge-alone trial or not really should be looked at. Also, stricter limits on publicity. I mean, I know that we have journalists' right for freedom of speech, and we've always had it, but there really should be limits on the publicity before and after a trial, and what can be reported and what can't be reported. I think that's really, really important to have as a consideration as well moving forward.
For sure. Well, we'd love to hear what you guys think. If you're listening and going, well, I have the answer, we should do this. Contact us on the Breakfast page, Breakfast Radio 97 on Facebook, or contact Despina directly. Desi, where can they go?
So they can email info@prialalegal.com.au. Of course, they can always phone the office, 55291 294. And I'll put this segment up on YouTube again. If anybody's missed the whole thing, please listen to it. And then again, reach out if you'd like to provide any feedback.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Despina and Wayne.
And we'll see you next week.
See you then, guys.